I felt like there was something strange going on in my house, so I faked a trip to visit my sister. While I was watching the situation from across the street, an elderly neighbor suddenly approached and tapped my shoulder, saying, "Wait until midnight. You will discover everything." When the clock struck midnight, my breath stopped at what I saw. But let me explain how I got to that point. As a 4-year-old woman, I ended up hiding in my neighbor's house, spying on my own home as if I were a criminal. Because what I discovered that night not only destroyed my trust in my family, but it showed me just how far the people you love can go when greed takes control of their hearts. My name is Patricia. This house where I have lived for the last 40 years is my sanctuary, my history, my entire life built with effort alongside my late husband. Every corner here holds our memories. The kitchen where we prepared Sunday morning breakfast, the living room where we watched our son Michael grow up, the garden we cultivated with our own hands. When my husband died 7 years ago, Michael insisted on moving here with his wife, Jessica. "So, you won't be alone, Mum," he told me. At the time, I thought it was filial love. How naive I was. The first few months were quiet, almost happy. We ate dinner together, talked, and laughed. Jessica was attentive, even affectionate. She helped me with the grocery shopping, cooked my favorite meals like a good pot roast or mashed potatoes. Michael fixed things around the house that broke down. I thought, what a blessing to have my family close in my old age. But about 4 months ago, something changed. It was as if someone had flipped an invisible switch. The smiles became mechanical, the conversations forced, and the whispers began. At first, I thought it was my imagination, that my age was playing tricks on me, but the whispers were real. Every time I entered a room, they would abruptly stop talking. Michael would quickly put away his phone with a swift, almost guilty motion. Jessica would change the subject with a tense smile. "What were you talking about?" I would ask them. "Nothing important," Jessica replied with that sweet voice that was starting to sound hollow to me. "Work stuff." "Mum," Michael would add without looking me in the eye. Then I noticed other details. The door to my old master bedroom, the one I had converted into storage after my husband's death, was always locked now. Before it remained open. "Why do you lock that room?" I asked one day. Jessica responded too quickly. "It's just that there's a moisture problem. We don't want your things to get damaged." But I did not remember giving permission for them to touch that room. I did not remember talking about moisture. And when I walked down the hall at night, I heard strange noises coming from there. Footsteps, muffled voices, laughs that were not my son's or my daughter-in-law's. One night, close to 11, I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. I got out of bed and walked carefully to the hallway, making sure not to make a sound. From my bedroom, I could see the entrance. I saw Jessica receiving a young woman with a small suitcase. They spoke in a low voice. The woman handed something over. Cash, maybe. And Jessica quickly tucked it into her pants pocket. Then she guided her down the hall precisely toward that room that supposedly had a moisture issue. I heard the sound of the key turning. The door opened. Yellow light spilled out, and then it closed again. The next morning during breakfast, I did not mention anything. I only observed. Jessica prepared coffee with that perfect smile that no longer fooled me. Michael was reading the news on his phone, distracted. "Did you sleep well?" I asked casually. "Very well, Mom," Michael replied without looking up. "Like babies," Jessica added. Liars. Both of them were liars. But I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was happening in my own home before I confronted them. That same afternoon, while Jessica was out at the grocery store and Michael was at his job, I tried to open the room's door. I had my own set of keys. Of course, it was my house. But when I tried to use my master key, I discovered they had changed the lock. They changed the lock on a room in my own house without telling me anything. My heart pounded hard. The rage began to boil in my chest. Who did they think they were? This was my property, my home. Every inch of this house belonged to me legally. But rage solves nothing. Rage only clouds judgment. So I took a deep breath and thought clearly. If they were hiding something, I needed to discover it without them suspecting that I knew. I needed a plan. And then it occurred to me. I would fake a trip. I would tell them I was visiting my sister in another city, like maybe Boston. I would leave them alone, and I would watch from afar what they did when they thought I wasn't around. That's when I talked to Harold, my lifelong neighbor. He lives right across the street from my house. From his window, he has a direct view of my front entrance. I told him my suspicions, and what he told me chilled my blood. "Patricia, I have noticed strange things." "Two," Harold told me in a low voice while pouring me some iced tea in his kitchen. Harold is 72 years old. He is a widower like me, and we have been neighbors since my husband and I built this house. He knows every corner of my life, every joy and every sorrow. For weeks, I have wanted to tell you something, but I did not know if I should get involved. I did not want to worry you without being sure. His hand trembled slightly as he held the cup. "What have you seen?" Harold? I asked him, feeling fear settle in my stomach like a cold stone. He sighed deeply before answering. I have seen people coming and going from your house at odd hours, always at night, always with suitcases or backpacks. Sometimes they are young women, sometimes couples, never the same people. They arrive in taxis, in private cars. Jessica receives them at the door. They talk briefly and then they go inside. The next day, early in the morning, they leave. Everything is very fast, very discreet, as if they are doing something they don't want anyone to see. His words confirmed my worst suspicions. I was not crazy. It was not my imagination. Something really was happening in my house. Something that involved strangers, money, and secrets. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked him, feeling a mixture of relief and anguish. Because I hoped I was wrong, Harold replied. Because I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation. Maybe friends of Michael's, I thought. Maybe family of Jessica's who needed temporary lodging. But when I saw Jessica receiving cash at the door last week, I knew this was a business. And a business done in secret is never an honest business. He leaned forward and lowered his voice as if someone could hear us. Patricia, I think they are using your house for something. I don't know exactly what, but it's something they don't want you to know. That's why they wait for you to be asleep. That's why they act normal during the day. I then told him my plan. I told him I would fake the trip, that I would make them believe I would be gone for a whole week, and that I needed his help to watch my house from his window. Harold immediately accepted. You can stay here in the guest room. Pat, he offered. And from the upstairs window, you can see your entrance and part of your living room perfectly. We will see everything they do. I felt immense relief. I was not alone in this. I had an ally, a witness, someone who could confirm what my eyes saw, so they could not later say that I was confused or senile. That same night, I returned to my house and began the performance. During dinner, I casually announced, tomorrow, I'm traveling to visit my sister for a week. I haven't seen her in months, and she's been insisting a lot. The reaction was immediate. Michael looked up from his plate with bright eyes. Jessica stopped chewing for a second and then smiled. A smile that was too wide, too enthusiastic. That's great. It will do you good to get out a bit, to change the scenery. Right? Michael, my son nodded vigorously. Yes. Mom, you deserve a break. We will take care of the house. Don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about a thing. Those words resonated in my head with a sinister echo. The way they said it, with that barely concealed relief, with that urgency to see me leave. I continued with my act. I need you to water the plants in the garden every other day. And please keep the house tidy. You know, I don't like clutter. Jessica nodded with exaggerated enthusiasm. Of course. Everything will be perfect when you return. Enjoy your trip. Perfect. They wanted me to leave. They needed me to leave. That only confirmed they were hiding something big. The next morning, I did the whole show. I took out my old suitcase, the one my husband and I used when we traveled. I filled it with clothes, toiletries, all in their sight. I called my sister loudly on the phone from the living room so they would hear. Yes. Sis, I am heading out there now. I will get there before lunch. Of course. My sister knew about the plan. I had told her everything. She was worried, too, and supported me completely. Michael insisted on driving me to the bus station. That's not necessary. Son, I can take a cab. But he insisted. He wanted to make sure I was really leaving. At the terminal, he walked me to the platform. He hugged me and said, "Have a good trip. Mom, call us when you arrive so we know you are okay." I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes I had known since he was a baby, and searched for any trace of guilt, of remorse. But I only saw impatience. He wanted me to get on that bus. He wanted to see me leave. "I will call you." "Son," I told him, and entered the terminal. But I did not get on any bus. I waited 20 minutes, enough time for Michael to leave. Then I left through another door, took a cab, and gave the driver Harold's address. When I arrived at my neighbor's house, he already had everything prepared. He showed me the guest room on the second floor. From the window, my house was fully visible. The front entrance, the small front yard, part of the living room through the curtains. "Now all we have to do is wait," Harold said, "and observe." I sat by the window with a knot in my stomach. My own house, the place where I had been happy for decades, now felt like enemy territory, a place I needed to spy on from afar, to discover what the people I had loved and protected were doing. The first few hours were normal. Jessica went out to the grocery store around 10, 0 inches the morning. Michael left for work as always. The house was left alone, silent. But when evening fell around 6, I saw something that made me hold my breath. A silver car parked in front of my house. A young couple got out, maybe in their 30 seconds. They were carrying a large suitcase and 2 backpacks. Jessica opened the door before they could ring the doorbell, as if she were expecting them. She greeted them with smiles. They spoke briefly. The man took out his wallet and handed cash to Jessica. She quickly counted it and invited them in. I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. I had just seen my daughter-in-law receive money from strangers and let them into my house as if it were a hotel. Harold was standing next to me watching the same scene, his face tense. "Did you see that?" I asked him with a trembling voice, needing confirmation that my eyes were not deceiving me. "I saw it. Patricia, I saw everything," he replied grimly. "These are not just suspicions anymore. It's real. They are using your house to rent rooms without you knowing. Renting rooms in my house, the house I built with my late husband with years of work and sacrifice. The house where I raised my son, the house full of sacred memories, and they were turning it into a clandestine business behind my back." The rage I felt at that moment was like liquid fire running through my veins. I wanted to cross the street, knock on the door, and confront them in front of those strangers. But Harold put his hand on my shoulder firmly. "Wait. Patricia, if you go now, we will only know this. But if we wait, if we watch more, we will discover the whole truth, the complete magnitude of what they are doing." He was right. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the hurricane raging inside my chest. I sat down again by the window, my hands clenched in my lap. Over the next hour, I saw lights turning on in different rooms of my house. The living room, the kitchen, and then I saw light coming from that room. My old master bedroom, the one that supposedly had a moisture problem, the one they kept locked up. Now I understood why. There was no moisture. There were guests. Strange people sleeping in the space where my husband and I had shared 35 years of marriage. Unknown people using the bed where he died in my arms. Unknown people walking on the floor where I had cried over his death for months. Tears began to roll down my cheeks without permission. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of fury, of betrayal, of a pain so deep that I felt like I would break in two. "How could they?" I whispered to myself. How could my own son do this to me? Harold did not say anything. He just sat beside me in silence, respecting my pain. Outside, the night continued to fall, and my house, my home, was transforming into something unrecognizable before my eyes. Around 9 that night, Michael arrived from work. I saw him park his car, enter the house with his briefcase as if it were a normal day, as if he was not participating in a monumental betrayal against his own mother. 20 minutes later, another couple arrived, younger this time, maybe 25 years old. Jessica received them with the same routine. Cash. Smiles. Doors opening. And they entered carrying their suitcases as if they were arriving at any roadside motel. I counted mentally. There were already 2 couples inside my house. 4 strangers occupying my spaces, breathing my air, touching my things. How long do you think they have been doing this? I asked Harold. He thought for a moment before answering. From what I have observed, I would say at least 3 months. Maybe 4. It started little by little. At first, it was 1 person every week, then 2. Now I see movement almost every day. 3 or 4 months. All this time while I lived under the same roof. They were operating this secret business. Every time I went to sleep early, every time I went out to run errands, every time I visited a friend, they took advantage to receive more people, to make more money with my property. I calculated mentally. If each couple paid, say, $50 per night, and they had 2 or 3 couples every night, they were making between $100 and $150 daily. In 1 month, that added up to over $3,000. In 4 months, over $12,000. $12,000 earned illegally using my house, my electricity, my water, my gas, without paying me a single cent, without even having the decency to ask me if they could do it. They stole from me. My own son and daughter-in-law were stealing from me in the most vile and calculated way. The night deepened. Around 11, the lights in my house began to turn off one by one. First the living room, then the kitchen. The bedrooms remained lit for a little longer, and then they too went dark. Everything fell silent. I remained sitting by the window, unable to move, unable to fully process the dimension of what I had discovered. Harold brought me a blanket and hot tea. You should rest. Patricia, tomorrow there will be more to see. But I could not rest. I could not close my eyes knowing that strangers were sleeping in my house. I stayed there all night watching, and my vigil was rewarded. At 6:00 the morning, the door to my house opened. The young couple who had arrived first came out with their suitcases. A taxi was waiting for them. They left quickly, discreetly, like ghosts, disappearing with the light of day. Half an hour later, the second couple did the same. By 7:00 the morning, all the guests were gone. Jessica went out to the front yard with a trash bag, left it in the container, and went back inside. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened, as if my house had not been violated all night long. Michael left the house at 8, ready to go to work. He wore his grey suit, carried his briefcase, walked with that straight posture I had taught him since he was a child. He looked like a respectable, hard-working, honest man. But I knew the truth now. I knew that behind that facade of a responsible son hid a man capable of betraying his own mother for money. A man who could look me in the eye during breakfast after having filled my house with strangers all night. During the day, I watched Jessica moving around the house. I saw her changing sheets, cleaning rooms, preparing everything for the next guests. She worked efficiently, with practice. This was not something new for her. She had an established routine. Every move was calculated, professional. She was the brains of this operation. I was sure. Michael may have agreed. Maybe he collaborated. But Jessica was the one running everything. I could see it in the way she managed the business, in how she organized every detail. When evening fell, on the second day, more guests arrived. This time it was 3 people, 2 men and a woman. They seemed to be friends traveling together. Jessica received them the same way as the previous ones. Cash in hand. Professional smiles. Doors opening. And I kept watching from Harold's window, mentally documenting every movement, every transaction, every betrayal. Harold had suggested taking pictures, but I did not want digital evidence yet. First, I needed to understand the complete operation. I needed to know if there was something else, something worse that I had not discovered yet. If this story touches you deeply, please subscribe to the channel. Share the video to help me grow better. I need your support to continue telling the truth. And then Harold told me something that changed everything. It was the night of the second day, close to 10, when he approached me with a serious expression. "Patricia, there is something else you need to know. Something I have been hesitant to tell you or not." My heart sped up. "What is it?" "Harold?" He sat across from me, his elderly eyes full of worry. 2 weeks ago, I saw Jessica meeting a man at the corner coffee shop. It was not Michael. It was someone older, well-dressed, with a lawyer or doctor's briefcase. They talked for almost an hour. I was at the next table, and even though I did not want to listen, some words reached my ears. I leaned forward, every muscle in my body tense. "What words?" "Harold," he swallowed before continuing. "I heard something about documents, about mental competency, about medical evaluations, and about nursing homes." The world stopped. Those words fell on me like blocks of ice. Mental competency, medical evaluations, nursing homes. No, they could not be planning that. Are you sure about what you heard? I asked in a barely audible voice. Harold nodded slowly. Wait until Friday midnight. Patricia, I have noticed that Fridays are special. There is more movement, more people, more activity. Wait until Friday midnight. You will discover everything. Harold's words resonated in my head like funeral bells. Mental competency, medical evaluations, nursing homes. It could not be a coincidence. Not after discovering they were using my house as a clandestine business. This was bigger, darker, more calculated than I had imagined. They were not just stealing from me. They were preparing me for something worse. Something that would take away not just my house, but my freedom, my dignity, my entire life. I spent the next 3 days in a state of constant alert. Every morning I watched the guests leave my house. Every night I saw new ones arrive. The flow was constant, almost industrial. Jessica managed everything with military precision. She had a notebook where she wrote down schedules, names, payments. I saw it once when she left it on the kitchen counter while preparing coffee. Even from a distance, I could see columns of numbers, dates, codes. This was not an improvised business. It was a well-planned operation with records, a system, with months of preparation. Michael participated less visibly, but he was a full accomplice. He was the one who changed the sheets Jessica could not manage to wash. He bought the extra supplies they needed: soaps, toilet paper, towels. He kept the lawn impeccable to make a good impression on the guests. And every night when he thought no one saw him, he counted the cash with Jessica at the dining room table. I watched them through the window, illuminated by the hanging lamp my husband had installed 20 years ago. Their hands passed over $20, $50, $100 bills. They made piles. They put them in envelopes. They smiled with that greedy smile that turned my stomach. On Thursday night, I decided to do something risky. I needed more information. I needed to understand exactly what Jessica had said in that meeting with the man with the briefcase. So, I called Laura, my lifelong lawyer friend. Laura and I met 30 years ago in a sewing class. She was always brilliant. She studied law in her 40 seconds. She specialized in family and property law. If anyone could help me understand the legal implications of what was happening, it was her. Patricia, what you are telling me is extremely serious. Laura told me over the phone, her voice full of professional concern. If they are operating a lodging business without permits, without paying taxes, without your consent as the property owner, they are committing multiple felonies, fraud, misuse of someone else's property, tax evasion. But what worries me more is what you mentioned about mental competency and nursing homes. Patricia, does your son have any power of attorney over you? Any signed document that gives him authority over your decisions? I thought carefully. No, I never signed anything like that. All my documents are in my safe deposit box at the bank. Laura sighed with relief. That is good. Very good. But listen to me carefully. If they are consulting with someone about declaring you mentally incompetent, it means they are looking for a legal way to take control of your assets. The process is complex and requires real medical evaluations, psychological tests, court appearances before a judge. They cannot simply declare you incompetent just because. But if they have a corrupt doctor willing to falsify evaluations, if they have an unscrupulous lawyer who knows the legal loopholes, they could try it. And if they succeed, Patricia, they can commit you to a nursing home against your will and take your house legally. Terror seized me. What can I do? Laura, she thought for a moment. First, you need solid evidence of everything they are doing. Photos, videos, testimonies. Second, you need to protect your legal documents. Make sure they cannot access anything. Third, as soon as you have enough evidence, we file a formal complaint. I will take care of the entire legal process. But Patricia, you must be very careful. If they suspect you know anything, they could accelerate their plans. They could try something drastic. Her words chilled my blood. Something like what? Laura paused for a second before answering. Like drugging you so you appear confused in front of a doctor. Like creating situations where you seem unstable. Like fabricating evidence that you cannot take care of yourself. I have seen cases like this. Patricia, and they are more common than people think. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Now I understood the magnitude of the danger. I was not just being stolen from. I was being prepared for a fate worse than death. Losing my autonomy, my home, my identity. Being declared incompetent. Being locked up in a nursing home while my son and daughter-in-law kept everything I had built. And all under the guise of legality, with documents signed by doctors and lawyers, with a judge who would never know the truth. Friday arrived. The day Harold had marked as special. From early on, I noticed a difference in the atmosphere. Jessica was more active than usual. She cleaned the entire house, changed sheets in all the rooms, bought fresh flowers, and put them in vases all over the living room. It was as if she were preparing for something important. Michael arrived home from work earlier than other days. By 6, 0 inches the evening, He was already home helping Jessica with the final preparations. At 7, the parade began. It was not one or two couples like the previous days. They were groups. The first to arrive were 4 people. 2 young couples who seemed to be on vacation. They wore cameras around their necks and were speaking English. Jessica received them with an impeccable professional smile. She showed them the rooms. She took the payment. 30 minutes later, another group arrived. 3 middle-aged women with large suitcases. Then an older couple, maybe in their 60s. Then 2 single men who seemed to be on a business trip. I counted mentally. There were 11 people inside my house. 11 strangers occupying every available corner. The living room had become a common area. I watched through the windows as the guests mingled, talked. Some preparing food in my kitchen. Jessica and Michael acted like hotel hosts, smiling, offering extra towels, recommending tourist spots in New York City. My house had transformed into a completely functional hostel. And I, the legal owner, was hidden, watching from the neighbor's house like a refugee in my own neighborhood. I have never seen so many, Harold murmured next to me. This is different. It is like a special night. He was right. Friday was the busiest day, probably because tourists arrived to spend the weekend. Jessica and Michael took full advantage. I calculated quickly. If each person paid $30 per night, they were earning over $300 just tonight. In a full weekend, almost $1,000, and they did this every week. The hours passed slowly. I watched the guests eat dinner, talk. Some went out to walk around the neighborhood and returned. At 10 at night, the lights began to turn off gradually. The guests retired to their rooms. Jessica and Michael cleaned the kitchen and the living room. Then they too went to sleep. The house fell silent. But Harold had told me to wait until midnight. That at midnight I would discover everything. So I waited. Every nerve in my body tense. My heart beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Harold's wall clock marked the passing of time with a constant, almost hypnotic tick-tock. 11:30, 11:40, 11:50. Every minute felt like an eternity. Harold had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted after days of vigil with me. But I was completely awake. My eyes fixed on my house, waiting for that something Harold had seen before, that something that would reveal the whole truth. And then, when the clock struck 12 midnight, my breath stopped. The side door of my house, the one that leads to the backyard and that we almost never use, opened slowly. A figure came out. It was Jessica. But she was not alone. Behind her came out a man I did not know. A tall man about 50 years old, dressed in dark clothing. He was carrying a briefcase in his hand. The same type of briefcase Harold had described when he saw Jessica at the coffee shop. My heart started racing. What was happening? Why was Jessica meeting this man at midnight? Why were they leaving through the back door like thieves? They walked toward the back of the yard where the old shed my husband used as a workshop is. Jessica took out a key, opened the padlock, and both entered the shed. The light turned on inside. Through the shed's small window, I could see shadows moving. They were talking. They were gesturing. Jessica took something out of her purse. Papers. Maybe. The man checked them with a small flashlight. Then he took something out of his briefcase. More papers. A thick folder. Jessica took them, reviewed them page by page. She nodded her head. They seemed to be reaching some kind of agreement. The meeting lasted almost 20 minutes. Finally, the man put everything back in his briefcase. Jessica turned off the shed light. They came out, but instead of returning to the house, they walked toward the back fence. There is a small door there that leads to the back alley. Jessica opened it. The man left through there and disappeared into the darkness. Jessica closed the door, secured the padlock, and returned to the house through the side door. Everything had lasted less than half an hour. Silent. Secret. Invisible to anyone who was not specifically watching. I woke Harold up urgently. I saw him. I saw everything. Jessica met a man at midnight in the shed. Harold got up immediately, still half asleep, but alert. "The man with the briefcase?" he asked. "Yes. It has to be the same one." They reviewed papers, documents. They are planning something. Harold. Something big. My neighbor rubbed his eyes and looked at his watch. It is late or early, depending on how you look at it. It is 0 hours, 30 minutes. But now we know that there is someone else involved. Someone who works in the dark, in secret. This is worse than we thought. I could not sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting by the window, watching my house as if it were an enemy building. At dawn on Saturday, the guests began to leave. Some left early. Others stayed to enjoy the full weekend. Jessica prepared breakfast for those who remained, acting like the perfect hostess. Coffee, toast, fruit, everything served with smiles and kindness. No one would have imagined that hours earlier she had been in a clandestine night meeting with a stranger. Michael left the house around 9:00 the morning. I saw him get into his car and drive away. Jessica stayed alone with the remaining guests. This was my opportunity. I needed to get into that shed. I needed to see if they had left anything, any clue about what they were planning. I told Harold my plan. He tried to dissuade me. It is too risky. Patricia, if Jessica sees you... But I was determined. I have the key to the back fence. I can enter through the alley without anyone seeing me. Jessica is busy with the guests in the front of the house. She won't see me. Harold finally agreed, but insisted on accompanying me to the alley to keep watch. We left his house through the back door. We walked through the silent alley. It was Saturday morning and the neighborhood was quiet. Most people were still sleeping or eating breakfast in their homes. We reached the back door of my property. I took out my key with trembling hands. The padlock gave a soft click. I entered my own backyard like an intruder, my heart pounding against my ribs. The shed was about 20 yards from the door. I walked crouched low, hiding behind the bushes.